23rd, 2020 at 3 o'clock. It's our budget work session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Fiscal,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem DeSantis,
Here.
Ralph Maya.
Here.
Sorry, Commissioner Maya.
Who cares?
Commissioner Guerrero. Commissioner Reyes.
Here.
Okay, let the record reflect that Commissioner Guerrero is not present.
So this is the discussion of our fiscal year 21 budget, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Michelle.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today to discuss our really preliminary budget. We're in the beginning stages right now, trying to form this and get it out in a timely manner compared to previous years. One thing that we know is it's been difficult during this time with COVID-19 going on. It hasn't made things any easier on us. However, even before COVID and moving on afterwards, there are some important adjustments to our budget that we need to make to start operating in the positive and stop approving budgets that continuously have a deficit tied with it. So the first thing I'd like to do is thank everybody for their hard work during these times. And I'd like to present a few different options to the commission, and this is open for discussion. Also, we've invited our department heads so they could give their side of the story, what they need, what they're looking for out of the budget on their behalf. Rochelle and I have been doing nothing but budget over the past couple of weeks. We have had the opportunity to meet with some of these department heads individually due to time constraints and other things going on and scheduling conflicts with one party or the other. We haven't been able to meet with all of them. The plan after coming out of today's meeting and having some guidance in a direction that the commission would like to see us go, we'll then possibly have some additional meetings with department heads, really fine tune this budget. Like this is real preliminary. We're just kind of throwing out some of the ideas where we need to be to try to have a zero budget, a balanced budget. Previously, like I said, when we present our budget, there's usually a deficit attached with it. One thing I'd ask is the people that are on the go-to meeting, if they please mute their mics while we are conducting these meetings.
I thought it was you.
I was crying. Go home.
So we've looked at a few different options with these budgets. We have the first option, which is before you on top, which is a flat budget. It's essentially carrying over anything that happened last year. I'm not sure, I can mute it real quick. It's carrying over the budget from last year. If we were to do that and account for the minimum wage increase going up from $9 to $10.50 an hour, we would be in it's $800 and some thousand, correct? $851,000 deficit. So we obviously cannot continue that trend. We cannot operate with a budget with a deficit of that amount. So we've been creative. We've looked at a few different options moving forward. And it's a combination of reduction in force and a reduction in services.
Just so you know, when we say the 851,000, that's just general fund, and the department's a general fund supplements.
Greg, do you want to discuss that a little bit as far as what that entails in the next option?
Okay, and then also just so you know, there's that 69,813 that's off to the right-hand side. So we have some grants this year that we have supplemented probably from water and from infrastructure for the matching on that grant. If there was no work done and it's going to carry over to next year, we're going to just carry over that balance. And so that's going to look like a negative in our budget at the end of it, but it's because the money's there this year. Does that make sense?
Well, how it's gonna be a balance, what do you say, deficit, if it's gonna be to the money's there?
Well, because it'll be in the cash when we start the budget next year. So we'll make it be in a deficit because it'll take it from the cash once we start spending the expenditures. So basically that 69,000 is pretty much like in savings until they finish the grant and we're done paying for everything.
Actually, it's already being budgeted, but it hasn't been spent.
Exactly, yes. So then, the next option, which is presenting as option number 1, is a flat budget with the minimum wage increase. And what we're calling pretty much an extreme reduction in force to get down. You'll see that takes us to a 0 on our general fund, meaning we would not be in a deficit. That would include 3 part-time employees, 17 full-time employees, and 5 vacant positions.
And that would all be cut, and that's
That would include 17 full-time, you say?
correct. And I think that's,
And the last one would be,
5 vacant.
I don't have a problem with vacant.
and that's my concern. I think we need to chip away at this deficit that we've continually had over the past years. And maybe we don't go and jump all the way to a 0 budget this year. I mean, eventually we need to work at that. We can't continue on the path that we have been on, but I think that's a bit extreme. I think that hurts us. I don't want to lose any employees, but there are going to have to be some difficult decisions that come up to get us to that point where we need to be. The other thing we've thrown around and talked about is reduction in services. So we need to decide as a city what's pertinent, what do we ultimately have to have as a city to run operations. The first thing that comes to mind, of course, is public works. We don't have water, we don't have wastewater, sanitation. You can't run a city, you can't provide water. Water is life. So those are going to stay, and even they'll be impacted by some of these cuts. These are educated decisions on where the cuts would be made. It's based on what works for operations, what we could function on as a city with the minimum staff. So then now we look past that, we need streets. That's always a big concern. We need to fill potholes, emergency services, EMS, police, fire, those can't go away. We need those as well. So now we start looking at our services. We look at senior center. They're pretty much self-sufficient, so there's no cuts over there. We get supplemented by the state, so that's not a direct hit to our general fund. We have a small match, right? But I mean, it's not, I don't want to take away from the seniors. So the next thing we're looking at is your recreation center, your library, museum as well. So we've talked about things, what's absolutely mandatory. So when you look at the museum, we staff it with 2 people when we have other museums throughout where we do not provide staffing, for example, the Railroad Museum. So that's an option where we need to look, do we continue to staff that? I don't believe we could afford to. Do we ask for volunteers to step up? That would be my suggestion. Same thing with the library. I don't want to completely lose a library, but for a town of our size, we have to provide the services that are realistic, that go along with that based on the income we have coming in. And with that being said, I think we could still maybe have a library, but we'd have to reduce size of staff. We'd have to reduce the hours that we're open. There's minimum requirements per state statute based on grant funding that we receive for the library. And based on what I read today, Linda was able to provide that. It's 25 hours per week, and I believe it's 6 hours that must happen either nighttime hours or on the weekend. So I think we could accommodate those and still fulfill those needs. We look at the recreation center, same thing. These are all departments that are supplemented by the general fund. They're not bringing in enough income to self-sustain. There's no, it puts us deeper and deeper in a deficit. So that's another thing I don't want to take away from the kids. I don't want to take recreation away completely, but it's something maybe we look at again as far as reduction of hours. Maybe we can't be open 6 days a week. Maybe we can't do it from the morning all the way through the evening. Maybe it has to be different hours. We have to get creative with scheduling and decide what are we gonna do to reduce hours and labor? So that's another,
Okay, what's the amount we're looking at this thing here that we need to cut for to be able to balance this budget on this, what you're talking about now?
so in that's where
Option one is a balanced rate.
option one's a balance. That's the most extreme option where.
Yeah, but now you're going on option two, because option one doesn't seem to be reasonable, but then we want to do option two.
Yeah, so the flat budget and not making any changes can't happen.
Mhm.
Option one is pretty extreme, and then option two, instead of laying off these employees, they'd have to go down to part-time. And for these individuals, it's based on work schedule, workload, what we can function at the city.
So actually what you're saying is, option two, we have to cut down how much money? 108,000?
That's the amount of deficit we would be in.
And so that's the amount we would have to cut. On option one, it's 851,256, right?
No, option one is the flat budget,
Okay,
the one with the zero.
yeah.
Option two is putting us in a deficit of
Okay, here you
108.
go.
And
Okay.
so let me tell you how many positions that includes. So it's 7 positions that would go from full-time down to part-time. We would cut 3 part-time positions, 10 full-time positions, and the 5 vacant positions.
Go over that again.
Okay.
7 full to part-time.
Yes, 3 part-time would be cut, 10 full-time, and then the 5 vacant positions again. And that would put us in the deficit of 108,000 with that, with those changes on the staffing.
What would we do with the 10 full-time ones?
They would be cut
Cut.
also.
It'd be laid
Okay.
off.
Okay, so now the decision would be here, because you said we have 2 of the museum that are full-time. So we have to look up, see where the services are least, will have the least impact in the operation of this community. Because right now, if you look at it, this is a big, and I've said it many times, this is a big geographical community. We're already in the skeleton crew, and as sad as it is, it's a hardship that we have to look at, you know, I mean, that it's gonna put some people in some hard areas. But at the same time, you know, even the library, even if we go or we cut some there, you know, the utilization of the library by everybody is really big in this town, because we don't have very much to, I mean, I see a lot of people reading the paper over there, I see a lot of people going, adults as well as kids.
Computers, they go there
Everything,
and use
so,
computers.
This is a lot of things we have to look at. I know the museum is very important, I support it all the time, but we also have to be realistic about a lot of things. We have the streets, we have the water, we have everything. It is, well, you know. okay.
We've also discussed, Mark and I have also discussed, I remember in a previous commission meeting or work session where you talked about, Commissioner Moyo, where you talked about, cross-training or
Yeah.
coming up, and so we've talked about taking the parks staff, the cemetery staff, and combining them, and and maybe the recreation together, and so then they could become like a combined team. And so one day you guys all go out and cut all the parks and trim them all up. And then the next day go cut all the vacant lots to keep them trim. And then at the same time, if there's nothing going on, then you go with the street department and help them cut the weeds and fill the potholes, because then you would have more staff on hand at one time instead of having everybody spread out.
Well,
and
actually,
just-
when you have cross-training, actually, when you have major projects, you can actually pull from one department to bail out the other department.
Yeah.
But it has to be a very cohesive work
Right.
among the department's head, you know? And I think sometimes we get to the point where some of these departments are very territorial, and that doesn't work very well. So the city manager is really gonna have to oversee this very well.
And that's where things will have to change based on, we've done this for 50 years. I mean, so
Right.
the plan that Rochelle and I were talking about, it's more, I call it grounds maintenance, because everybody is pulling together and helping each other out where there's a shortfall. So if there's not funeral services, or if there's
Yeah.
nothing pressing at the cemetery, we pull them and they'd help mow and weed eat on all of these city properties. Vice versa, if there's something that's really pressing at the cemetery, we'll pull in some of the parks guys to go help them do that. The only two that are unique and they stand alone is water and wastewater. And that's because to work in those departments, you have to carry a state certification. So I
And
can't,
sanitation also.
and sanitation as well. So I can't have those certain departments do too much. I could have them help others if need be, but they're stretched pretty thin. And it's being creative and helping each other out. We need to come together as a city and we need to help each other out, and that's the best.
And I was also gonna say on the Railroad Museum, I know the Railroad Board has been talking about turning that over to Connie to let her do the museum, so we wouldn't be involved in that at all.
But actually, we're not involved with the employment part, but we're involved with the utility parts and supply. The deal that makes it hard is that's gonna, the only way that would happen is Connie would oblige, because remember, that's a total different entity, totally different funding.
Which we'll say that for next meeting, because May 14th, it's actually going to be on the agenda, the updated MOU between us and Main Street for the facility itself at the Railroad Depot. And then we also have the annual contract with Main
Well,
Street.
they're already paying on utilities and everything, aren't they?
Main
Pretty much.
Street,
Yeah,
is the
Main
utility
Street,
system.
I mean, so.
But if anything happens with the building, then it falls on us.
Well, that's correct.
Right.
Well, it's our building.
So with all three of these options, do they all include, reduction of services?
Yes,
Okay.
they do. Option 3 is the exact same as number 2, except it's with the cost of living. And on the cost of living, what I did was I did a 2% for full-time employees and a 1% for part-time employees and nothing for salary employees. And that still puts us in a deficit of
Actually, can
117,000.
we really afford to give any kind of percentage? We're really in a very bad situation. I don't know how the thing's gonna come out with this coronavirus, because our gross receipts and our taxes are not
Exactly.
being full. So,
Yep.
at this point, freezing an increase is very, very, thing that we have to look at. As hard as people might get mad at us, and I know the department said they're all good workers and everything, they deserve it. But I also like to see somebody else keep their job rather than lose people, you know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, when you have to feed your family and you have invested in your retirement, it's
So
not easy, it's not a good decision.
I just had to put it out there.
Yeah, but that's
Just
what I'm saying,
because,
is-
so-
and we have to look at it from that perspective.
And the last option, or the last one down at the bottom, this number, the deficit of almost 804,000, that's the total requested budget from all the department heads, like their wish list is what that totals.
Sorry, guys.
I've got a question. With these cuts and everything, how would that affect with the overtime? Because are we gonna end up having overtime, people having to work overtime in order to fix their positions? Because that's gotta be calculated in as well. If it is cheaper to have a full-time employee or a part-time employee instead of paying time and a half. Sometimes people, I don't know if y'all did, I'm just saying, sometimes people go and calculate their budgets and, we always want to go and take off our biggest expenditures, which is, somebody that's filling that position, but sometimes filling that position ends up costing you, up to 2 times more for that 1 hour. Was that considered or?
So most of the departments are not, for example, library, they don't have overtime. They adjust their work schedule. Same thing with the museum. So the departments that have the majority of the overtime would be water, wastewater, streets,
But I'm talking after the cuts,
right?
there's gonna be a larger workload with less people. That's what I'm looking at.
They would have to start flexing their schedule. We would have to make it, like they're gonna have to get creative on their scheduling.
Actually, I thought we had frozen all hiring, and I noticed that that wasn't stuck with, you know what I mean? So now the decisions come down again to this mess.
I agree, and
And it should have been followed through when the commission said we should freeze it, that means freeze.
so I've actually shot down a few positions that were requested to be filled, and I've shot that down. The exception in my eyes is public safety. We've talked about that on the police side, fire and EMS. That's
And I
something.
understand that part, but we also talking about the fact that we have invested a lot of these people that are trained and certified to provide these services. And now, to lose them is pretty hard.
I agree.
So with our current employment numbers, are those pretty standard for a municipality our size?
Yes, that's something I wanted to bring up. So we've done some studying amongst other municipalities, And there are cities twice our size that are operating with the staff of maybe 10 additional more employees that we currently have. For example, I could give you even Santa Rosa when we talk about the cross training. Their staff, they're responsible for water, streets, they're combined, they do it all. Whereas we've been lucky, and I guess it's because it's been that way, we have ample staffing for all of those. I think it's just holding people a little bit more accountable and expecting more out of them instead of just collecting a paycheck. It's more earning your paycheck. In all honesty, I think this would help, hopefully, to make it a little bit more competitive process for holding these positions, knowing that it's not an entitlement, it's something we should be happy we're there for a job to perform what we need to do. With that being said, like I said, I don't wish having to do this to any department. This is a hard decision. This is probably the worst part of this job, is having to come up with these ideas. And ultimately, like I said, that's why we want to present it to the commission and let you all give us some guidance on. There has to be changes and reduction in services. Where do you want to make those cuts at?
Yeah, and I understand that part.
Our current budget has a $200,000 deficit, correct? Somewhere on there? The current budget where we approved last time,
300,000.
300,000? So, I mean, even the 108, it's a good little step forward. So in your projections, have you figured, when could we actually propose a balanced budget? I mean, obviously, the one this time is harsh and, like I said, a little rough, a little hard to swallow.
Well, you asked for a balanced budget, and there it is.
So, do you see projections that we can get there a little easier and make the,
Well,
reduce
when
the
you
bleeding?
take into consideration the minimum wage, which is probably the majority of this problem, going from
Basically
9
hitting
to
us twice this
1050,
year.
It's basically hitting us twice in this budget system.
We're going from 9 to 1050, and then the next fiscal year we go to 1150. So that's another dollar on, and I believe there's next, if we don't cut some of the positions that are here, we're gonna run into, what's it called, compression.
Which we're already, this isn't really even accounting for much in regards to compression. If we did that, then it'd be even worse. And that's something we need to keep in mind, where I don't want to live in the present and just think, okay, we need to do this today. This is what's mandatory for today, but realize, like Rochelle was saying, next year we go up another dollar for minimum wage. So now we have that much more compression. We now have departments that require certifications to hold those positions, and you could have someone coming off the street without a certification making the same amount. We can't do that. It's not good for morale. I've already heard multiple employees wanting to quit because of that. So we need to start addressing this issue now, realistically planning for next year and the year afterwards.
Well, I'll be honest with you, if we don't have a budget that can afford it, then why are we hiring people?
Which I have not signed off on any hire paperwork.
Okay, then we have to look at that, you know, until we get back into it.
I think you're just painting the scenario, right?
The main thing I want to get across here is there are some positions that have to be hired. For example, wastewater. They've been short-staffed for a year or two. So I have to get that filled.
Why
That's been
can't you
big.
transfer any of these people from here, rather than lay them off?
We could, but they'd have to be willing to do that position.
Well, that's an ultimatum you can give, either that or.
And that's a great idea.
Or adios, you know?
An option, we can give an option.
The issue, like I said,
There's
this
only
is,
one, though, there's only one position.
this is
No, but
real
I'm saying, but
preliminary.
still, you know what I mean? I know it's preliminary, but we have to also, plan for the foreseen of these complications, and if we can start, avoiding the disaster, why not do it? And say, well, there's a position, we're looking at the other who's interested in going and transferring.
And the only reason I haven't gotten that far yet is just because this would take effect July 1.
Well,
And I can't go and start telling people we're gonna cut them if we don't know. We need some direction, which way we wanna go, and then we'll have to start reaching out and say, hey, these are the projected cuts.
That's
Well, and even then, the cuts would be an administrative decision, whereas we're just looking at the budget and giving you
Right.
your total to work with.
Correct.
Exactly.
Well,
Well, my humble opinion, I mean, I thank you for putting the balanced budget in there. But I think that is just a little too hard to swallow at this time.
I agree with you on that one.
I think option 2 is
Gonna be our best
It's
bet.
gonna be our best bet. It's, it's rough, but I know last year in the same discussion, we decided we were gonna take the middle road, and now we're faced with that hard decision again, and it stings just a little bit more this time.
I guess one positive side to this is looking at this being worked towards a preliminary budget. Last year's preliminary budget was in a deficit of what, 400 to 500,000?
General fund, yes.
General fund. So we've cut that down by nearly 400,000 right there. So that's great to do that in 1 year. My concern is, like I said, we got to think for the future too. So we need to start taking action.
And we have to be prepared, like Commissioner Moya said, we don't know what GRT is gonna be like after all this is done. We may have a shortfall right there.
Yeah.
Again, I just did a flat budget on that one.
Right.
So if anything, we'd like to get to a point where we could go back and be able to provide these departments the equipment that they need. But we can't do it when we're operating at a deficit, because then we're not making any money. We're just constantly looking to general fund to supplement it, but eventually there's not gonna be any money in general fund. And then we're gonna be in a big world of hurt. When the water department could potentially have more cash savings in general fund, it's a concern. And it's a concern for DFA.
Well, with this, is there gonna be, I know some of the communities are looking for some assistance now in this corona thing to restart the economy. Is there anything looking in our direction that we might look at as well?
As far as us trying to help them out in the city, or for us to get help as a city from
The
the
federal
state?
government is looking at that more and more. They're trying to make some money available through the Congress at this point.
So I have received emails, and it's one of the form as what we received in the past. There is some grant associated with it, free money, but there's still a loan attached to it. And we have to be careful with that. And they've reached out in regards to water and wastewater projects for infrastructure, but we have 2 or 3 projects pending right now, and I don't think we have the reserves and the extra money we need to at this point to move forward with another project. We will just put ourselves further and further in debt. But that's the only thing I've seen so far is something in regards to infrastructure for water and wastewater. Another thing that,
Well, what's the interest rate on something like that?
it varies. It depends the offering agency. If it's USDA, it's substantially higher. If it's something that gets passed down from EPA through, say, drinking water funds, it depends. They take every single application and it varies. It's based on your income. It's based on if we have low to moderate income individuals in our community. It's based on the city's budget. There's a lot of variables that go into that. So there's not one set rate, if that helps answer your question.
Well, all in all, we have to look at this thing, from the best interest that we can in helping this. I don't like the idea of having so much unemployment coming out of our community. So I think we're gonna have to look and see how we can shuffle some of these people around. And then the other thing is, if there's people that are willing to retire ahead of time, maybe now is the perfect time for them to do. Because actually the city employees, it's one big family, and I think we need to see how we can do to take care of them. I know that the race, we have to sacrifice it as bad as it is, and people deserve it, they have the right to have it. But at the same time, we also have to look at other people who have to put food on their table too. I'm not for releasing people, I don't have, and I will be happy to look at areas that are not significant enough or impact enough, And at this point, I would not like to see hiring of anybody. Everything should be frozen like the commission had asked several months back, and kept it at that so that we could help this. I don't like the laying off of anybody.
I think since I've been here, I've signed off on one individual to be hired, and that was for the police
Yeah,
department.
but it's been over 6 months since we talked about this.
I agree.
And that's what I'm saying. We were preparing for these things. That's why we were hoping that we would freeze everything for this purpose, because we were already having some, 400,000 or something like that, and that's why we were saying that, but it didn't happen. That's why now we have to pay the price.
Another thing I wanted to point out, just ways to be creative and try to save the city money. I've been working with Chief Hogan. We're talking about combining fire and EMS services together for the new fiscal year, and that has some upside to it. By doing so, we'd be able to reduce our hours in overtime, and it also helps us pay for certain things out of the fire fund. So as a whole, I think it gives back to the city. We have better response times. We have more staff available for that. And then we also, like I said, save money on overtime and some of those goods needed. So that's something that we've been discussing. It's things like that where we need to think outside of the box and do something, no matter how uncomfortable it is by changing things. Unfortunately, we have to do that sometimes to make this a better place.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I know that our utilities are stretched to the max, so we can't really go into rate comment there.
I agree.
Is there any other services that we can go in to explore and see the possibility of anything?
As far as reducing services
No,
or increasing rates?
reducing services or increasing rate?
I'd hate to increase rates.
I don't mean the water, because I know we're already at the max, and I myself have been complaining about it. But other areas.
When you take into consideration water, wastewater, and sanitation, with the combined bill, it is quite high. It's on par with a lot of those larger cities throughout the state, and sometimes higher than others. One thing that I had talked about previously that I think we may look into is per ordinance, we go up 4% for water each year to hike up the rates.
What are we paying right now?
For a standard bill just for water or combined?
Yeah.
What is it, Maribel?
77, 72.
77, 72 is a lowest bill.
So that would be somebody who has their minimum consumption at 3,000 gallons and sewer would be at 5,000 gallons. So it's not the lowest bill. What we're saying is that would be pretty much a standard bill.
Right.
Well, I understand that part, because economically, look at our community, economically, it's not, I don't see anything coming in to help people subsidize from below the minimum wage.
And that's what we need to really turn this around. We need GRT. We need to be attracting new business. We need new things to generate funds. That's what's going to help turn this around.
With that said, this budget includes any of our current contract obligations, anything of such, right? So, I mean, something I've been tossing around for a while is coming back and renegotiating the contract with EDC. I mean, we're giving them 58,000, and like you said, we need something to come in, and we're just not getting that.
We don't have to renegotiate.
The mayor has called for executive sessions, and we haven't been granted that. I mean, our voice is in our purse, and in this next budget, maybe we need to look at cutting funding to EDC.
That's an option. That's something, I'm not sure what the contract between ourselves and EDC looks like. I'd have to pull it, but that's a potential option.
Actually, yeah, we have to look at something, because if we can continue going at the rate, instead of increasing, we're decreasing.
Yeah, at 58,000, I mean.
And this is the snowball effect to that. No businesses are here. We lost Kmart, we lost Alco, we've lost KFC. Losing all these businesses means lost GRT. And so loss of GRT means we don't have money to keep having positions and, staff and services.
And we're also going to take a hit in gas tax.
Oh, yeah, it's really come down.
That's going to hurt us
It's
for
gonna
next
be a
year's
huge
budget
one,
as well.
yes.
Between that and GRT. GRT, I'm not as worried about on the aspect as when you think about where we get most of our GRT, it's going to be from our stores, our dollar stores, which I think that's possibly actually been up. It's actually been up, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it sure has been up.
Well, I know one that's remodeling, so.
One is increasing their building.
As far as restaurants, that's going to be down a bit. As far as lodging, that'll be down a little bit. But where I'm more concerned is honestly the gas tax. That's what we use to go back into our streets department. That's what's helping fill those potholes. And if that goes down, that hurts. So it's going to be down.
Well, and the gas tax also pays their salaries, so if that takes a hit, then general fund would have to supplement it, or we'd have to look at cutting some positions from that department, which we don't want to do, because of course the community is upset about all the potholes, so.
Right.
amazing enough, the reduction on I-40, because I travel it a lot to the clinic, throughout the clinics, it's really come down on regular cars. Probably the biggest not increase, but the same is even the semis are down. But, and so that's gonna hurt us in every effect on the tourists. I don't know. Well, we can look at that, and I think we just have to start planning and see what's in the best direction we have to go. And if that, and in that situation, if we have to go with, again, enforce that freeze, hiring freeze that we suggested 6 months ago, and then whoever, see, hopefully some retirees will come out and will complete their retirement, so that other people can finish theirs. And if you have openings in other departments, see if you can, and some people want to transfer who might be, from other departments. Hopefully that will eliminate the layoff.
I was gonna say too, the real estate business has picked up like you wouldn't believe.
Supposedly the car sales are up from last month,
But I mean.
even though we can't go nowhere. They're
Really?
buying cars.
One of my real estate friends, she says she's getting calls daily from people out of state, making
I've heard the same
appointments to
thing.
come in and look at houses.
Good. Hopefully that helps.
Remax sold a couple
But
of
then-
houses this week,
How many?
couple.
But
in
also
this
you're
area,
looking at the
in
other
this area.
senses, when I look at some of the obituaries, I look at a lot of people who have been here forever, there's another empty house because the family don't even live here.
I think a lot of misconception is smaller town doesn't have all the amenities you need, but we also have our assets.
Yes.
I think it thrives during this time with COVID going on. You notice our numbers are down compared to these more populated areas. So although we may not have all the cool stores and different things to do all the time, we do have good people and we do have a strong, tight-knit community, and we are away from a lot of that
Well, the
stuff
one,
that's congested in the city.
the one couple that came from Chicago to look said it wasn't anything for them to drive an hour and a half anyway to go to a store because.
It's just you saw buildings. That was
Just
it.
normal traffic, and so going to Amarillo wasn't gonna be anything for them.
Well, see, now they can see wildlife.
Yeah, so that was not a drawback, anyway.
Commissioner Moore, I just have a question. So we have 5 vacant positions that we're looking at cutting or putting on that freeze, but you're recommending to move some people into those vacant positions?
Not to be, we're not gonna hire anybody until, are they frozen?
Yep.
Okay, then keep them frozen.
Okay,
But if you have areas that are necessity, like they say, for example, the sewer, the treatment plant, you need people there. You need, you have, those are the areas that I'm looking at, because you can only operate so much with a skeleton crew.
Right.
Beyond that, then the department becomes non-functional.
so then let me go a little further. So if, the commission chooses option 2
Mhm.
and we lay off all these, positions and or we reduce them and it forces somebody to retire, then are we allowed to hire for that position?
Transfer within the position should be the most appropriate thing.
But what if it's just a 1-person
I think,
job?
I think in that, it's like, I don't know, I'm sure if it's a vacancy, it's kind of a need, but then there's, like Commissioner Moyes, there's some that are absolutely positively a need, and some that we have a schedule or a slot to fill. If somebody retires and it's not necessarily something that we gotta have somebody sitting in there, or we can have somebody that's working part-time, work another part-time position. I know they've done it before with, I wanna say wastewater and the dog catcher. You had a part-time position there, then you worked another part-time position, so you had one person working 2 positions. If that was a possibility in some of those cases, I think that would actually save, you give them an option. I think we've all done it in a crunch. Whenever you're managing something, you've got to do something in a crunch. But if that's an option to save from laying anybody off, somebody's willing to work 2 part-time positions to stay full-time, I think that's something that could be offered, if that's something doable.
So you have to remember, so when they go to full-time, then we have the benefits, which the benefits
Exactly.
are what cost us a lot of
Exactly.
money.
Yeah, but you.
So that's
but-
why we were able to save by moving some full-time down to part-time,
Mm.
which it's
But at the
also
same time,
awful,
you're
but
looking at the fact is, we're cutting 7 people. or 10 people.
10 people.
And
Actually,
actually,
13.
yeah, and we already invested a lot of money in these people for training and everything else. And if we could just transfer them or give them an option if there's an opening somewhere that is gonna become opening, that'd be great. Because then, we don't lay them off.
So I can tell you right now, I wouldn't go to the extreme to try to pull the whole, animal control and wastewater.
No, I'm just saying, I'm just saying that it's been done.
But I can tell you right now, there's internal talks, and for the sake of it being a personnel issue, we haven't elaborated too much in detail. I don't want to tell too much yet until we get closer. We'll do further evaluations, but there is plans to merge some departments and to cross-train and have people do more tasks and take on more duties. And it's, there won't be a shortfall in getting the work done, I'll put it that way.
I think merging the departments with training, a lot of them need certifications, and I think that only makes an employee more valuable. That way, if, you know, probably every 5 to 10 years, every company goes to a stretch, and the first thing they do is they reach out to their most valuable employees, and those are the ones that are multi-trained. So.
And my thing, the other reason, other than it being personnel, I didn't want to say anything. There's some people I may not have talked to, and I want to give them the benefit of, and respect to talk to those department heads before we actually start moving forward with this process.
Well, how many people do we have right now that are at the level of retirement?
There's probably about, if it's not this right now that they're already at their years, I'm gonna say for right now, the ones that are over 25 years, there's probably about 3 or 4. And then coming up, like in the next year or two, there's probably about another 5 or 7.
But I also have concern with some of those employees are some of our best employees. They have certifications, they have the experience. So if you lose that, I'm not trying to push anyone out, because then now we're losing
I
a
don't
lot
mean
of value.
pushing them out, but, you know, if I was about ready to retire, I'd be bullying out of here.
Right?
You know?
And this is just, you know, and I don't know if we can even do this. I know some companies have, but I know municipalities are different than companies. Is there some type of incentive we could look at to maybe entice a few of them if they're that close to retirement or beyond those years? And, you know, I hate to say, hey, bud, you know, you can either retire or you're gonna get laid off, one of the two. I'd rather sit there and say, man, if you're ready to retire, we've got something, you know, this is what we can do for you right now, even if it's, I don't
So we
wanna
have
say that,
we have an email out to Randy that's in, making sure in this reduction in force what we can as far as exactly that same thing. I do also know that we can only, if we were to offer some kind of like an incentive package, for, let's say, somebody who's at 24 years, we can only buy 1 year of their PERA to get them to 25.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess we're just gonna have to go with it a little at a time, and then I would recommend you guys look at some, where you're looking at cutting on employments, and we can go from there.
Right.
And like we said, keep the freeze on, unless there's really necessity, come before the commission, and we'll see that, you know, give us solidified why we need that position to be hired, because right now, we really need to keep this, well, first of all, we're not allowed to operate in the negative in the first place, because the state pretty much doesn't allow us to do this.
it can be the negative cash.
Yeah, but that's it. But none of the other-
So, and again, no, they don't like the negatives, but
No.
if general fund's in a deficit of 108, we would be okay.
Yeah, we'd be okay. but-
They don't like it, they wanna see that we are
But
bringing
they're
up.
very, very strict on that, and you'll be written up, and then your audit goes down.
Oh, yeah,
your rating
it would be
goes
an
down,
audit finding
everything
for
goes down.
sure. Mhm.
So I think you guys need to put it together and come into recommendations to the governing body and see what you think. I would be open to that.
Me too. I think
But,
that
you know,
sounds.
and again, coming back to the fact is, remember, these people have families, and they're good people, and we certainly, the way we can save them, we certainly would like to see that.
So by any means, this has not been easy.
No, it's not easy,
And
but-
the merging
Even
of
just
the-
Talking about this
that-
today,
I
but
think that would help too,
Makes me
the merging of some of the
Department.
departments would help.
It's people stepping up and
Right.
helping out when they have a chance instead of so much downtime. There are some places where there's some downtime.
Right,
Yeah, there it is. Let's see what we can do.
okay.
I think that would be probably one of the things we have to look at. If we have to cut expenses in somewhere, we'll let us know.
So at
Well,
this,
in the meantime, I think, when contracts do come up, we negotiate hard.
Yeah, we have to look at all contracts, you know what I mean?
I mean, $5 here, $5 there, adds up to real money eventually.
And I am all for let's looking into that EDC contract and
Yeah,
budget,
definitely.
definitely on that.
I'll do my footwork and make sure we're not
Right.
doing anything we're not supposed to, but then we'll,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, the whole deal is, let's get real, economically, I'm not happy what I did see.
Right.
And I've always said in the council, it's a part of the record. So,
Yeah.
and the reason that is going to trade show, it doesn't recruit as much as it going out and working.
Or maybe we just need to set some form of benchmarks, because to my knowledge, we don't really have an expectation. We just, here, go find this business and,
You're on your own.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, and we really have, the whole deal is, if we bring industry, we have a lot of potential. And I know we're competing against a lot of people, but at the same time, a lot of the same on the eastern part of the state. But at the same time, we land somebody with 2, 3 jobs. I'm telling you, my agency before the corona, we had hired 6 people. We even took one from the city. Another one had applied from the city. Yeah. So look at, you see, it's little things like that, little industry can bring employment, you know what I mean?
Talk about switching hats, huh?
Yeah. And we had another one we were gonna take from the city, but at the same time, the corona hit.
So the one thing I wanted to do, and I didn't want to invite the department heads here just to sit and listen and feel like we're just gonna do whatever we want to and not listen to their voice. So I'd like to open up to the commission if you have questions for the specific department heads. If the department heads have some questions for us, give us some feedback on what you think needs to happen with your departments. I'd like to take your advice and see what we can do to try to keep some of those requests coming forward.
Well, I did want to ask Calvin something,
Oh.
because, whoops, was that me? Oh, because I know you're in charge of wastewater,
Yes, ma'am.
and so if we did this, where we would do some cross-training and everything to get people to come in, how's that gonna affect wastewater? How much training would they have to go to work for you?
I can start out, anybody at the bottom.
Is the mic on?
Oh,
Hold the button down to the turn screen.
It's on the side by the tent.
Up on top.
It's not turned on. Now it is. That's what it looks like.
Touch it.
Okay. I can start training
Alvin?
anybody, huh?
Would you tap it, please?
No,
No, it's not on.
let it go.
It's on, all right,
Now it is.
okay. That's what I do, is I prefer to start people at the bottom.
Okay.
So that they're trained to our facility and our routines and the way we have to meet EPA and state regulations.
Okay.
So in fact, I've got 2 guys that's what they're doing, is starting at the bottom right now.
All right.
But there is so much for us to do, maintaining the maintenance, equipment and everything else. 4 people is pretty tight.
Pretty skeleton.
Yeah,
So how many people do you normally have over there? Just the 4?
just the 4.
Okay,
And yourself.
Yeah,
so that's 5.
that's 5 with all.
Okay,
Which he has a vacancy now, and I guess what I get, so wastewater, water, and sanitation would be the 3 hardest, because you have to have a state certification.
right.
Before you can even test to get certified, you have to have at least 1 year of experience in that field. So where I envision some help, maybe to Kelvin, where his guys need to focus on rebuilding some pumps or something to do with plant operations, that's where we could get this grounds maintenance crew to go in there and help weed eat and mow for him. So that takes away.
Okay, not going into the wastewater.
Correct, not so much
No.
doing the wastewater
Good,
stuff.
because that's what was worrying me, is if you got somebody in there that didn't know what they were doing, could mess up the whole works.
Yeah, they could, real easy.
Yeah,
But just helping take care of the grounds would be a lot of
okay,
help. Because
okay,
we got a big area.
okay.
I got a
In
question.
which you just had interviews for your vacant
Yes.
position. Okay.
I got a couple of questions. One of the questions I have, the convention center director, that's you, gentlemen. Back in the old days when we did the floating of the convention bonds and everything to make it what it is today, one of the biggest thing at that time was that we wanted to have somebody who does nothing but recruitment and go out and because the whole concept when we did the studies, it showed that the convention center could self-support itself with whatever type of conventions, meetings, or whatever was needed. But, and I'll be honest with you, in the last 4 years that I've been in the council, I haven't seen that very much happening, you know what I mean?
I've reached out to to organizations within New Mexico about bringing a convention here or even a meeting or something. You know, it's difficult. They want casinos, they want nice hotels, they want mountains and beautiful scenery for their families and for their employees that go. But I have reached out to people and tried to get to come. In fact, I talked to one lady and she said, "Oh, absolutely not. Tucumcari doesn't meet our criteria for what we have to have." And then 2 weeks later, she was on the phone with me booking a regional meeting.
That's what I'm saying,
A
because
regional
actually, I belong to several boards, and I noticed that we don't have it when we just go, well, just continue the same one every year. But, you know, the information, the recruitment, because we might be a small community, but the capacity in the beds, we do have it. We do have
Right.
it because it's huge. We have a huge tourist industry and a huge motel.
Right.
And at the same time, we have a lot of restaurants. We have the capacity for that type of things, you know. I notice that's what I'm saying. Maybe the way that it's put out, maybe the way it's advertised, maybe it's not doing as much as I would like to see.
Right. But I have reached out to, went down the computers, went down list after organization, you know, reaching out to people, talking about our town and what to do here and so forth. But it's they want, you know, nice, beautiful places. And that's what I found we run into.
I know that last year we had, what is those, Knights of Columbus or whatever you call those people. They had some sort of regional, they were trying to bring another one.
And they were trying to bring another one in. They agreed with it.
But they really enjoyed the fact is that when they were here, they had a lot to do. I think the city provided them transportation to museums for their families while they were in their meeting. They enjoyed the convention center, was big enough for them. They had plenty of motel rooms. They were very satisfied. And that's a matter of fact, they were trying to get some sort of like a.
It was the state
They're
meeting.
trying to get,
Yeah, but they were trying to get something regional.
Yeah, right. And they agreed to come back and they were talking to me. And then one day they just called and said, "No, that wouldn't happen this year." And I don't know why they were upset.
I mean, that's an example only,
Right.
you know what I mean? That I noticed that when I used to belong to the sequestered equine therapy, we had areas like in Moriata and in that area. And here we have the county fair with all where you could put your horses and everything, you know?
Right.
And then nothing was ever, in any of the organizations I belong with, they were promoting Tucumcari in that area. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we're not doing it right where it's getting, where it's reaching out or
Yeah.
whatever.
And I've had people like reach out to me,
Mhm.
but when I check the date that they want, well, there's a quinceanera, there's a wedding reception, you know, there's some other event already booked. You know, we were booked until September, October, until the coronavirus, every weekend. You know, we should be working every weekend. We had something booked, already planned. I've even got the 2021 calendar on and people are already booking. And I am taking bookings for that, but I'm not doing any bookings right now, like probably till September or October. Like some people have canceled and I've got a few dates open, but the main thing is if I've got somebody that reaches out to me that's interested, like once I bring in a convention or something, it's already booked and it's somebody local. But it's usually a quinceanera or a wedding reception or a birthday party. You know, it's already been taken.
So
That's where we need to utilize the convention center for what it's actually for. It's not a civic center, it's a convention center.
Yeah, because actually when we did the study, because I was on the council then, the whole concept was most of the study showed that it would be self-sufficient with itself.
So I have some plans moving forward, and one of those, this is a perfect time to discuss it, is I brought it up at the last lodgers tax meeting. We had talked about getting a full-time marketer on staff and utilizing lodgers tax funds out of the executive side, which wouldn't tap into this general fund. And that's my plan to help out at the convention center. Not only would this person be responsible for the marketing of the city of Tucumcari as a whole,
But recruiting.
but they'd also be recruiting and they'd be able to step in and help out with that. Whereas the day-to-day operations and maintenance would go towards somebody else and this other person could step in as far as marketing.
Well, yeah, because we have to utilize any resources we have to bring that dollar into the community. Because we need it.
And that's a person, for example, today, instead of myself having to set up the go-to meeting, the YouTube stream,
Right.
we have somebody that's that constant contact, that person in between the city and laundry tax as well. That's the person that's out there marketing, updating our Facebook page. That gives us a chance to have a true marketer and we advertise, correct. And in return, we'd expect this individual to work with our community. I prefer someone, it'd go out for advertising, hopefully try to have someone locally put in for it. My thing is, we need this to be more efficient in the marketing efforts, because right now, obviously, there are none at this point.
So the convention center, just so you know, between the rent income, the Del Norte income, liquor sales, it's 30,000 out of a $213,000 budget.
30,000 negative?
No, that's
That's
how
all
much
we need.
revenue it would be bringing in, or what we're projecting it to bring in. But like you're saying, for it to be self-sustaining, then the income needs to be higher, because like you're
Yeah.
saying, we need more conventions, we need more things
Well,
coming in to help offset that
Yeah,
cost.
because you have, let's say, for example, when I go to some of these meetings, especially what we call the National Association or State Association, whatever they, we spend a lot of money. I mean, a lot of people are in that bar there, they drink a lot, they stay at the motel, they eat everywhere else. I mean, I'll be honest, you see your primos there all the time, but anyway, it's amazing, you know what I'm saying? So they spend money, I mean,
Yeah,
they throw money.
That's another thing we have, not to go negative, but it's one thing we don't have in our favor, is we don't have any hotels that have those bars.
No, but then certainly they go to the clubs, or whatever, because a lot of people are members of other clubs, like, the
Elks and
Yeah.
things like that, yeah.
But another thing that I did run across, talking to other people, they want full service hotels that have the restaurant, the bar, and so forth, not just the
But
rooms
most
and
of the
everything.
hotels we stay on are not full services, which is very.
But that's one thing that I've gotten a lot, especially from government organizations and so forth, that's a mandatory. They had to have a certain amount of full service, I think it was 6 full service hotels per community for their people to stay in. We didn't have that.
Well, and shopping.
Right, shopping, movie
That's another-
theaters,
That's
malls.
another drawback is the shopping.
Shopping is
So, I mean, we have some cool stores, don't get me wrong.
I agree with the
But,
alcohol,
yeah,
and that's not our fault.
no,
But when you only have 2 places and you gotta drive across town to get to one of those other hotels going home, and, the state police pulls you over, you know, they don't wanna take it. It's even going to the Elks and stuff. I can understand that.
But you
And we don't
you
have
can
any
provide,
taxis, we don't have any
I got
of
a
that
question.
either,
When somebody wants to get a quinceanera, are they renting out the whole building, or do you still leave rooms available if somebody's wanting to rent a smaller party throughout the day? Say, I have
I do.
a meeting I want to do over in the forest room, whatever it's called.
Right.
over there.
If they want the whole building, we'll charge them for the whole building.
Okay.
That includes the Liberty Room too. But if they just want the ballroom and the bar, we just charge them for that. And we've had that. We've had quinceanera one evening, but we'll have something in the Liberty Room or the Narrow Visa Room during the day for smaller events, like a baby shower or something. We've had that. But gambling's another big thing. They love to gamble.
Oh, we
They
do
love
it
to
here.
go to
We just don't do it
casinos.
legally.
Yeah, they love to go to casinos. And the other thing, what I had on the tip of my tongue, they kept saying was, they love the casinos, but most of the groups that I talk to, they go to either Santa Fe or Albuquerque. That's their 2 big. Other people go to Ruidoso. Some, the other groups go to Ruidoso or Red River, up the mountains. But the main place is Albuquerque and Santa Fe. I've been told numerous times that's the only places we have our meetings, are Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And I've hit that a lot.
a lot of it, I know that maybe, because I know I go to some of the, like I sit on board, the governor appoint me. And I tell you one thing, that we don't go to casinos, we meet wherever we are. And I went to the National Association of Social Workers of the State last year, and very few were at the casino gambling. Most of us were because we get the free rooms, some sort of complimentary, but the whole deal is that some of those, even us, can hold some of those conventions because they're not that big of a crowd.
Right.
This
But
is-
that's what I got for
and
feedback.
another problem too, and nothing, but the catering. if you have a huge group, it's hard to find catering for,
It is limited.
yeah.
Yeah, but we do have a commercial kitchen there that a local restaurant or somebody can just utilize it if they're gonna do the catering.
Well, we do, and I agree with the mayor, there's not a lot of us. I was actually booked all the way into November, and I've lost a lot of money to all this.
Yeah.
But, say they call, there's really, I wanna say 3 people locally that will do that. Now, what we ran into last year at the Rattler reunion, we brought, well, actually 2 events I know of have brought in catering from outside because nobody locally could do it. You know, we were either booked or one thing or another. And they don't use the commercial kitchen when they bring it in.
No,
And it, boy, it takes the quality out of it. But
Yeah.
that is another thing. I think we have some great caterers. And
Right.
I'm not even just speaking for myself. I think we have great catering.
no, I think we do,
But-
but just the
But
fact
that is a concern.
but you also have to look at it, if that becomes a good industry, then you will develop people with good skills in catering.
And I love using that kitchen over there,
Right.
don't I, Lloyd?
Okay, any other questions for anybody?
If not, I know I've had people text me that wish to speak, that are
Sure.
viewing on the computer. I just want to let everybody hear if they had any questions, comments, concerns, if commissioners had questions for them. If not, then I'd open it up for the people that are on the go-to meeting, that I could unmute them so they can talk.
Okay. Anybody out there want to say anything?
I think they gotta get unmuted, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going.
You guys are unmuted.
No, talk now,
Oh,
they're
I mean-
muted. They're muted.
Oh, the good thing about it, Ruth Ann covered me, so that was great.
No, I kept leaning back so they could see.
And I kept going like this.
I know. I've got your boot up here.
All right.
Doing today.
Who is it?
Can you guys
Go ahead now.
All right. Good afternoon. How are you guys doing, commissioners? This is Tomas, the Parks Department. I hope you guys can hear me. On your guys' disposals for the budget and stuff, as far as my three departments, we've been working together since we've been so short-staffed. We've been working all as a whole, and everything's been going good. I am, with some of you commissioners, I'm kind of against getting rid of employees to adjust the budget. Instead of cutting employees that are working on their careers, I think we need to cut on some services as far as like subcontractors, private contractors and stuff like that before we start impacting on the employees, because the employees have dedicated their time working towards the retirement. And I know it's kind of hard to fire people, but some of these guys are pretty dedicated employees to the city, and to come out now and having to let them go and then getting subcontractors or contractors to fill in their position, it kind of insulting to the employees, I believe.
Well, how many subcontractors are we utilizing, are you talking about that we utilize?
Well, I mean,
Do we use,
I don't
let
want
me
to
ask
get
Mark
out of
that.
bounds or anything.
No, sorry about that. Let me ask the city manager. Mark.
So I guess he's gonna have to be more specific if you want me to list all of them, but I mean, we have subcontractors in the form of engineers, which we don't have anybody on staff that can do that. We have contractors in the form of attorneys, which nobody can do
No,
that.
we understand that, Mark, but let's go down to the area of
Yeah.
the department.
Well, Lamas, if I may, I think you're saying that if we make cuts to employees, then we'll have to utilize subcontractors to supplement. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think what I'm meaning like, I don't want to say any names, but there's one person that works for the city that retired and now is a subcontractor to.
Oh, okay.
that
I
job.
get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
If we cut them, then we have to use.
Yeah, you're talking about people who had retired and come back as a contractor or worker. Yes, okay, that's, okay. I
Right,
understand.
independent contractor worker, yes, I think,
Well, that's a good idea. We can look at that too. Also, we can look at that because they already had their careers and completed it. And now we have somebody else who wants to have the same retirement. So maybe we do need to examine that subcontractor who was at one time a city employee, now retired, and now is being contracted to fill a position in the city employment. So yeah, that'd be something we could, and I can think of two right now. So I think we have to look at that. That'd be another area that we can explore.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Thomas?
No, that's not all I've got right now.
It keeps hitting your hand.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Tomas? Are you still
Yeah.
on? I did want to tell you how much I appreciate that you guys have kept the tree place open, because I've had a lot of people cleaning up their yards and talking about how it's been nice to be able to go up to Coronado and dump all their tree limbs. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. The way we were able to do that is we utilized our part-timer from the recreation center
Good.
and put him to run it. So that's how we were able to do that for the community at this time, just to get the community and get our employees utilized in positions that could be filled.
Good job.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, anything else?
I guess the month's hand up.
Anyone else?
Anybody else out there that called in a go-to meeting that wants to speak?
No.
Vicky?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Oh, okay.
Who else is on?
Who else is on besides?
Noreen, and I don't have anything either.
All right.
Janet and Clara are both on there.
Janet, Clara, do you have anything?
This is Clara, and I don't have anything either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Janet?
This is Janet. I don't really have a whole lot to say other than we need to quit hiring positions that we've never had in the past when the population was half of what it is, or twice the size of what it is at the current time. That's my own opinion, and I've thought that for years, but
Are you still there, Janet?
that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
That's all I have.
Okay. So, have anything else on budget we want to talk about, or?
Next meeting, we get the voting on the budget.
So May 14th, I request that the commission has another work session, and we talked about budget once we have the fine tuning and some of these wrinkles ironed out. And then that night in the regular commission meeting, I recommend that we approve our preliminary budget.
So,
3:00 again?
I don't know that we'd have to do it that early. Because what I'm gonna do is just go with, if you're saying option 2, then I'll move forward with option 2, fine tune everything, make sure all the numbers are correct. Because remember, I have to have it into DFA by June 1st, so, which would put me at May 31st. So we have to get it approved so that I can get it in.
So now that we have guidance, the next step would be meeting with department heads, and start talking about implementing some of these changes and go from there.
all right, now I just want to make sure all the commissioners are on the same page. Everybody in agreement with budget number 2?
I am.
With, Todd, you haven't said much.
Well, I'm in agreement with it. I'm just hoping that we can also find a way to utilize the personnel. That's the,
Yeah.
and I understand it's a tough business to be in, but, I agree with Tomas. There's avenues we can take a look at. I think, we should definitely take a look at it and see how that comes out. Well, if we meet again on May 14th, I would like to, if possible, we kind of have an idea of, how we're going to utilize with these positions and stuff.
Right.
If people are willing to move, if there's anybody interested, maybe an incentive in to retire. I'm not sure who the contractor is or anything like that, but if we can utilize our employees instead of the subcontractors and stuff like that, I think that'd be on the 14th, when we meet for this, if, I'd like to know where we've gone with the employees.
Unless if you wanna have another commission, or another special commission meeting, work session, sorry, to talk about that instead, in case you guys have further changes, instead of trying to do it on the night when I need you to approve it, that's an option also.
And we're also talking of the fact is that we're not gonna look at any raise increase at this point.
Right, no rate.
It doesn't include the cost of living.
And that's what I mean, yeah. I mean, I understand, but I think we also have not be so selfish and allow 10 people to lose their job.
So one doesn't really have anything to do with the other, but there will need to be, based on commission's recommendation, on the 30th, we have that special session.
Okay.
So if we could maybe do it on April 30th, which would be next Thursday, have that preliminary talk, and then the 14th, follow up some more. And then I also would like to request possibly talking about Main Street's contract and their MOU on the 14th. So we have some discussion before we just jump into voting on it the 14th.
Well, of course, we need to have all
What
the
time is
information.
our session on the 30th?
I'm not sure. That's something I'd like to talk with the commissioners offline after we finish this.
Okay.
I do have one more thing I would like to talk to the commissioners about too, which is the golf course.
Oh.
Yes,
Where we're at with, what's our plan going forward with that?
that's one thing I was wanting to talk to you about too, was if there's any way, these people have paid their fee for the whole year, is there any way we can prorate it?
Which fee are you talking about?
Well, their fee for the golf course, they pay their annual
Sure.
fee
There's some people that pay like $500 to golf all year.
to golf, yeah, and that's their golf.
Is that from July? Does it start in July or it starts in July?
Starts in July.
Mhm.
So
And
it's
so-
gonna be-
Since they haven't been able to go out there March and April, is there any way we can prorate that? The same with their shed rental.
we wouldn't be prorating, you're talking about giving a refund.
Or giving them refund or,
So in
Knocking it
regards
off
to
the-
the sheds, they haven't even been billed for 2020,
okay,
And
so
that's,
they have not paid for that.
okay.
so, before we go any further, because this is gonna lead into a whole lot of different things. So the golf course contract is coming up,
In May.
right, in May, and we need, so it's gonna have to be decided if we're gonna keep it or not. The sheds, revenue $15,000, and that money is used to pay a loan that the golf course has with lodger's tax. They took out a loan of $70,000 for 10 years. They owe $49,000.
The golf
So-
course did?
Yes, to redo their water sprinkler
Right.
system. So if the golf course were to not be under the city any longer, general fund would probably have to pull that money out and give it back to lodger's tax.
Well, let's look at the other thing is, I think the golf course is required to remain under the
Why would
city.
it not be under the city?
It's required to remain under the city, I think, as the understanding with the owners of the real estate. I don't think if we don't keep it under the city, I think it reverts back to the people who own the real estate.
But is this a service that we have to have? This is one of those
Yeah,
other
but that's
ones,
a
do we
decision
have
we
to
have to
have
make,
this?
because if we discontinue the golf course, then we won't have a golf course, and then we don't have the money to do another golf course. because-
What do we spend on the golf course? I thought the employees weren't city.
So we're not paying any salaries, but
We have a
they have
contract with the
yeah.
$86,000 contract. And then, so then their budget would be, like $60,000 to maintain it. And so the sheds is in a separate fund because it's considered, for their capital. And then they bring in about 22,000 between their memberships and the green fees that we get from M&M Golf right now. So
So
we're losing money
No, I know we're
on the
losing
golf,
money
on the golf course.
So what's coming up in May is we're gonna have to go out for an RFP for somebody to come in and continue to run the golf course. If there happens to be worst case scenario, no bidders, then we'd have to discuss what we're gonna do at that point, because the city does not have the funding to take the brunt of that all on our own.
Right.
We wouldn't have the
Yeah,
ample
but we're gonna
staffing
have
to
to be
mow
very
it.
careful how we do it, because certainly we don't want to destroy something that has had a huge reputation, and also the fact it took a long time to build to that level. And believe me, I am not a golfer, and I don't like golf, period, and I never gone up there but twice.
I do not.
No, I love it.
Never but twice.
Never but twice.
Yeah, well, the only reason, yeah, well, I went, yeah, there's a big story behind that's why I hate golf.
As far as the membership fees go, we could look at, you're looking at for across the board for everyone who bought one?
Well, could you kind of see how much it comes out per month, for their membership, and then maybe
We can take it off of the
take off
next
of their
membership.
next membership, take off a couple of months for their next membership?
It's kind of like a refund type thing
Right.
because of not being able to utilize it because
Right.
of this situation. Isn't there any way we can recuperate any of that kind of revenue from the state or feds or anybody like that under any type of program? Because that puts us at a handicap level.
I'm not sure. Hey, that's a golf reference.
That's
right.
I hate golf.
Realistically, I don't know if there's anything for cities. I don't know if they can recoup some on the side as the private concessionaire, as being the contractor who's running it. I don't know.
No, but look at us, look at these people who couldn't play. I mean, that's part of the tourist industry.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of tourists.
That like to play. And it's a beautiful golf course, I mean, don't get me
I
wrong.
love to go out there when I'm not working, but I definitely don't want to lose it. That's,
Yeah, well, that's one place you can hide and I won't find you. Because I don't go there.
Now we know.
No,
Now we know where we're gonna hide out at.
Now we know where to go.
Yeah,
So,
We can look into that and see.
okay.
and then let's see if we get any bids.
I just, yeah, I just like to just remind it, we, we're a business, we're here to be a business and not so much always a handout,
Yeah, but at the
especially
same
general
time,
fund.
but at the same time, we have a responsibility to our residents and our residents have a responsibility to us. And we have to fulfill that, and that might be at a loss at times too.
so that brings up something else now that I think about it. I had spaced it and I forgot about it.
Uh-oh.
Being with the certain situation we're in with COVID and how everything's being pushed back, in this budget for this next coming year, the public pool is not part of this budget. It was left out because, one, the budget for the pool was already spent within this last budget year due to a leak, which has still not been fixed. There are certifications that have to be done. There's chemicals, there's hiring the staff, which we're behind the curve right now because at this time, we had already had applications going out. We don't advertise for the job. And realistically, that's another, 8 positions that we're not gonna be able to afford. By the time we'd even be able to open school, if things go back the way they normally would be back in session. So I hate to do that. That's a service that's up again to the commission, but then we'd have to cut something else out to make this budget work. But based on those items that I listed, I don't think we'd be able to open it this year. We'd have to discuss future years moving forward. The other thing I'd like to point out is the city takes a brunt of a lot of these extracurricular activities that aren't necessary, that are a necessity for the city. And I'd like to branch out, whether it's at a state level, at a county level, schools, somebody to help, if they can, to help take on some of this burden. Do they have funding available that would help us continue to have this pool open, to help extend hours at the recreation center, to help in any aspect? And I think that's one thing that we've stood alone on an island for a while, expecting to brunt that weight on our shoulders and be the hero of the day. Unfortunately, our budget does not allow that to happen. So I think we need to be creative, and I'd be willing to reach out to some of these entities to see, is there additional funding somehow, grants, to be
Help out.
able to do this?
Yeah, because even, let's get real, even Tucumcari is part of Clay County. Maybe the county could help out. Even if we don't like to admit it.
Sure, young people in the county go use the pool.
Oh, yeah, dude.
So the pool is grouped in with recreation, which is supplemented by general fund. So we would expect them, we only budget them $6,000 to bring in revenue.
Which it's not a moneymaker. We do it as a service to the community to help
Well, we
out.
have to.
And the whole recreation budget's $291,000. general fund, so limits 273,000 of that.
So the problem right now is that it's got leaks, it's gonna have to be repaired, so even if we
wanted to, we're
wanted
fine.
to open it, there's no way we're going to be able to this summer because of the repairs, right?
Correct.
Okay.
They had a huge leak and it ate up their water budget within like the first 2 months of the year.
Oh my God, you didn't have to worry about circulation.
And then plus 7 staff members.
Okay.
Well, I hate that, because I know
A lot of kids really look
the
forward,
kids
but
look
also
forward to
you don't know
this.
how this Corona thing's gonna happen. You can't really get it,
And we know we're at
I'm
least,
prepared.
we're on
I'm
shutdown
prepared
to at
for
least
now.
May 15th.
Pardon?
So with that, we're at least till May 15th.
Right.
So at that point, we've already started conducting interviews.
Right.
And we're typically opening beginning of June.
So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to prepare it, doesn't it?
Correct. And if they're not certified, if we don't have all those certified lifeguards coming back, now we have to get them certified. So I mean, there's a lot of costs. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. It's just,
Well, if the pool is not gonna be ready, why even bother hiring or doing anything? We can't.
Well,
be
that's
doing
why I
it.
said we're not.
and some of this is due to the pool leak, some of it's due to COVID, and some of it's due to budget. I mean, it's multiple reasons.
And so those numbers that I gave you on the position cuts, that's not counting the lifeguards.
Can you guys mute your microphone? We can hear your listening.
Sorry.
It's gonna be fine.
No, it's, not fine. We're almost there. 4:30. Close enough, I guess.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fine eventually.
Eventually.
So anything else?
Nope.
I don't have anything else.
So do we want to just adjourn for right now and then,
Take a break.
well, we don't have
relax, and
housing
get
till
ready to-
Oh, I didn't
5:30.
bring anything. I gotta go back and go get it.
We don't have housing till 5:30 anyway.
Oh,
So
we've got an hour to go.
you have an hour, so. Have an hour to what?
Go play golf.
Anybody know where to order a pizza?
No, good places.
Hey, so we're adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.